Necromunda exists as one world of millions within the galactic territory of the Imperium. Upon its surface stands the vast human constructs known as hive cities, home to billions of human souls, encompassing the full spectrum of the human condition. So it is all but inevitable that within the deepest recesses of any hive city, where sunlight is a distant memory, humanity festers and rots. For nothing exists in these darkest levels beyond an all-consuming and oppressive darkness. These lower levels, often referred to by some in hushed whispers as the Underhive. For within its sprawling labyrinthine mesh of collapsed architecture and superstructure, heavy industrial factorums and the nondescript remains of the oldest parts of the city, which now stands far above, exists this realm of desolation. Gangs vie for supremacy, and every aspect of unscrupulous, criminal and human scum exists within its mass of slum and ruined hab blocks. Bounty hunters, murderous animals and their human equivalents, traffickers, traders, dealers, every imaginable crime and human detritus can live out an existence within the unmonitored depths of the Underhive, for the rule of law is non-existent here. These darkened depths exist as the extremity of the hive city proper. Its blackened, decaying mass exists as a forgotten, dark contrast to the masses of human construction and unending labour above, not to mention the opulent towers of the hive spires. Down in the darkest depths of hive cities, the air is thick with a perpetual haze. A nondescript toxic miasma permeates everything. It clings to the skin, it seeps into the lungs, it burns, poisons, and disfigures those who dwell too long in the very worst of such conditions. The stench of rot and decay is omnipresent, mingling with the acrid tang of industrial waste. For any who wander or are cast down into such a realm, basic survival is for most all but impossible. Of the more normal Imperial officials who would return from this environment, some will suffer unidentifiable conditions that leave them even being permanently disfigured, internally damaged or worse. The ground itself is a treacherous expanse of cracked, disintegrating ferrocrete, twisted, rusting metal remains, all enmeshed within the detritus of countless generations of waste, and the millions of citizens from the uppermost areas of the Underhive who discard whatever cannot be recycled down into the darkness. The distant echoing clank of machinery serves as a constant reminder of the city's relentless hunger for industry, and the sporadic cries of unseen creatures hint at horrors lurking just beyond the edge of perception, but there are many more cries unseen of the human variety. For in the Underhive, light itself can be a very difficult commodity to acquire. Faint flickering lights struggle to pierce the dim gloom, their power connected to long-forgotten, impossible-to-discover power conduits that connect to isolated thermal vents, barely functional and not listed on any engineer's charts. In the depths, these motes of light continue to pierce and stand in isolation against the occasional shaft of light that penetrates from far above. All of this combined creates an extremely troubling landscape, where light itself casts such long, sinister shadows they dance and threaten with malevolent intent. In the darkest corners of the Underhive, shadowed outlines of mythical hunters emerge. From the semi-opaque miasma, figures of incomparable terror, Spyrers. Clad in insectoid armour that is in the eyes of ordinary hive dwellers nightmare-inducing, these elite hunters have not crawled out of the decaying rot that is the Underhive, nor are they Imperial-sanctioned operatives arriving to carry out some high-priority objective on behalf of the Adeptus Terra or the local governor. Spyrers descend from the upper echelons of the Hive, driven by a perverse rite of passage that some might suggest contains an altogether voracious appetite for murderous slaughter. Spyrers are defined by their armour, for it is a fusion of highly advanced technology and baroque detailing. The surface plates shimmer with an eerie otherworldly glow, and this reflects the sparse light in unsettling patterns. Each Spyrer suit is a masterpiece of ancient forgotten craftsmanship, paired with an array of deadly weaponry that augments the carefully trained capabilities of its user and renders its wearer a near invincible predator. For Spyrers are, unlike so much of the Imperium's technical capabilities, not cumbersome lolloping suits of powered armour. They are the closest thing to artisan suits from the zenith of the heresy, or even the dark age of technology, for they enable the wearer of such suits to move through the Underhive with an elegant predatory grace, every step placed with a chilling confidence, and bolstered by the nobility commanding centuries of unchallenged supremacy. Any who would encounter a Spyrer in the depths of the Underhive face an embodiment of death itself, and it would be rare for any to escape with their lives. Noble Spyrers see all life within the Underhive as little more than animalistic in terms of its worth, and so to extinguish a soul here means nothing to them, and their priority is to maintain the legend of their presence, to ensure that the mere mention of them should instill a primal fear, a bone-deep terror that transcends all rational thought. Of the rare survivors who escaped such encounters all or at least partially intact, which may in fact be the result of tactical or propaganda reasoning, they will speak of the Spyrers having cold, dead eyes, calculating, devoid of humanity and mercy. It only increases the all too accurate perception that these human hunters revel in their unrestrained and likely sanctioned crimes. For many who choose to or are pushed into the path of becoming a Spyrer derive a twisted pleasure from inflicting agony upon their prey or mastering instantaneous surgical kills. The victims of Spyrers often will meet gruesome ends, bodies left as macabre warnings to others, sending a message from those above that you may exist in the Underhive, the realm of the lawless, but that does not mean you are unreachable or unpunishable by those who exist far out of reach for the denizens themselves who dwell in darkness, both literally and metaphorically. Gang members will find favoured champions thought untouchable, with their limbs severed in surgically precise strikes inflicted by weapons that defy any power known to gangers. Corrupt traders and traffickers will be found strung up, chests torn open, to expose lifeless hearts, faces frozen in screams of terror. Such sights are commonplace for those who crossed the wrong guild official with upward connections in the Hive. The Spyrers' methods are as varied as they are brutal, each kill a statement to those in the lower Hive and a testament to their sadistic ingenuity. For Spyrers are not merely hunters, they are wardens of the Hive. Their actions exist to those with no oversight to always remember their place, that the ultimate power wielded by those above is so disconnected from their realm of understanding that to defy it invites despair. Hive Spyrers are the city's hierarchy given living form, and to the inhabitants of these lower levels, Spyrers are just mythical nightmares. They're figures who few believe could truly exist, and that very rarely are they spoken of by any who have seen them firsthand, but that for all who must face them quickly realise resistance is futile. They are the shadows that silently stalk its prey, ever watchful, ever lethal, and carrying with them an insatiable appetite for cruelty. Yet the Spyrers themselves know all too well that their suits only carry them so far, because to enter the Underhive is to descend into a hellscape few would believe could exist within the Imperium, and for the youngest Spyrers, descending into the darkness for the first time, some will make tactical miscalculations, a wrong turn, a dead end, that could leave them facing a barrage of crude firepower, but that even their massive armoured suits cannot mitigate. This realm is the world of the gangs and those who have little, if anything, to lose, meaning it is consequently one of the most dangerous places within any Hive city, and only those who train and prepare themselves for will emerge from to rise again to the spires their vows achieved. It may often appear that to exist within a Hive city is very much a free-for-all. People disappear and or are just murdered on a whim, and so reflecting on the bigger picture, is living in the Underhive really so bad comparatively? Well, yes, is the simple answer. Because, as we've noted so often, life for citizens within the bulk of the Hive Spire is certainly far from an easy life, but it is considerably preferable to the Underhive, where any semblance of law just does not exist. Random killings, individuals disappear into the darkness, and all that could imply. And maybe just for some fun, there's crazed mutants on the loose. Most gangs, even in the lower hive, use brutality to set an example, as little else will qualify. You can well imagine what can take place in the Underhive between those gangs then, where those who were a little too spicy even for the worst of the gangs may well be exiled to. Only the most hardened and well-equipped Imperial officers will venture into the depths of the Underhive, and when they do so they will be well prepared. Palatine enforcers, arbites, bounty hunters, on occasion maybe even Mechanicus, Sororitas, Inquisitors, even Astartes, should they have cause. But of those who may most regularly descend into this hellscape from the upper echelons are the Spyrers. For within the upper hive nobility, by stark contrast to the lower hive levels, immediate daily violence is not commonplace. Yet to exist within the Imperium and the Era Indomitus is to know that the galaxy and rarely your fellow humanity are safe to exist around without one eye open. Of course, in the lives of the nobility, someone lurking in the shadows holding a bared blade is not entirely uncommon. There are endless scores to settle between noble houses, but this is not the same as a rite of passage to prove their worth in the brutal reality of a hive world. Becoming a Spyrer, then, is also dictated by one's standing within the larger family household. While some members of a nobility will inherit power from a bloodline, others must do more to prove their worth. Yet to be granted the privilege of Lord Helmore bestowing upon someone a Spyrer hunting rig requires already some rising level of favour within the nobility. Yet, for those who take it with them into the darkness and return, a newfound respect, even fear, will be afforded to them by other members of the house. So most hive nobles who descend into the depths of the Underhive as Spyrers are usually younger peers of rising status, and are then sent on vowed missions to prove themselves and determine one way or the other if they are deserving and worthy of respect among the nobility. And this is achieved most often by eradicating some particularly troubling undesirables, maybe a gang who's getting a little bit too big for its station. But achieving this is no small thing, and to give them a fighting chance of survival in such a hellish environment is why the advanced hunting suits are provided to them. The exact origin, though, of these remains, like so much technology within the Imperium, at best clouded and obscure. It is, though, a fair guess that it involves both Dark Age archaeotech and very possibly the Jakero. That last assumption, though, is surely my own speculation, but it's reasonable to my mind because the Mechanicus are not out here producing en masse Spyrer rigs. As I say, though, the exact origins are unclear, but the hunting rigs provide the young nobility with both high levels of protection, an exosuit capable of carrying significant firepower, and all manner of stim-fueled adaptations for survival, not to mention degrees of camouflage, as they engage in one of the most thrilling, reprehensible, dangerous and decadent activities: human hunting. Now, any hive noble would tell you this is a very important rite of passage for them, and besides which, it also serves an important purpose in eliminating and keeping down the very worst elements of a hive city, demonstrating to others that the realm of the lawless is not one that goes unmonitored by those who have real power. While this may be true, it seems almost certain that there is also a darker side to Spyrer hunting, and that within some hives it could be more akin to a competitive sport, with nothing of course other than my own speculation to hand in this regard, but I think we could all well imagine a hive world, not necessarily Necromunda, where Spyrers are descending down into the Underhive, but not to achieve vows of respect and notoriety, but to see who can rack up the highest score or achieve the most dangerous and impressive kills. An activity that would more than likely attract gambling and perhaps even be recorded with a live feed to entertain watching audiences in the upper spires. For whatever true reason Spyrers are descending into the Underhive, be it vows or some other competitive aspect, the one certainty is that it is at best extraordinarily morally grey. For the longest time, Spyrers were also referred to collectively as Outlanders, that is, individuals from outside the collapsed industrial wasteland of the Underhive, and they were also noted as belonging to the sons and daughters of the noble houses of Necromunda. And while this may have been true at one point in time, it is now believed that only those young members of the House of Helmore have access to the Spyrer Rigs. Of course, it is always a possibility that those in other houses may exert favours, information to extort a suit for a member of one's own noble household, because to do so would be a rare and potentially dangerous privilege, but one that would be ultimately also very necessary. Armed with exotic weaponry and driven by the need to fulfill their vows, they will descend to prove themselves. And this drive, combined with their advanced hunting rigs, sees Spyrers launch out of the darkness to decimate entire gang patrols, or even enter gang hideouts to slaughter all within, emerging with grisly trophies to prove their worth. Spyrers were also historically known only to have descended into the Underhive of Hive Primus to carry out their campaigns of brutality, but with the promising scraps of data emerging around the investigations of Hive Secundus, the Spyrers also are deployed within the pitch darkness of this collapsed Hive city. But only House Helmore has the resources to create and maintain such exceptionally rare suits, for as noted previously, many believe their origins to lie within the dark age of technology. Unlike so much technology within the Imperium, each suit follows a pattern: Horus, Jakara, Malkadon, and Yeld. There also exist other rare suits, such as the Sethenian, or the rarely seen Patriarch and Matriarch. The suits themselves are self-sustaining and repairing. They also contain supposed power boosters that enable the Spire Hunter to not simply learn the suit and how best to use it, but to become literally more powerful the more adept they become with it. And this is an almost unique characteristic, and it points to the ancient origins of this technology. Effectively, the suit enables its wearers to master it over time. And the reasoning for this presumably would be that to unlock its full capabilities right out the gate with an unexperienced wearer would most likely lead to failure, death, and a total waste of such a valuable piece of archaeotech. But this boosting mastery also enables Spyrers to evolve in subtle different ways, each able to grow and develop their individual combat style in connection to the suit itself. In so many ways, the suit becomes the wearer one and the same. As noted earlier, because those who descend into the Underhive or other desolated hives of a world tend to be younger members of a noble house, it's not uncommon, despite their powerful advantages, that they may misjudge and come under a lethal hail of firepower at the hands of a gang caught off guard by some mutant or other Xenos horror. So there arises the issue of, what then happens to their hunting rig? Could somebody steal it, sell it, wear it? Why are there, for example, no gang members striding around in garishly painted Spyrer rigs that they have recovered from a poorly experienced hive noble who got a little more than they bargained for? Well, thankfully, unlike more generic power suits that can be just worn by really anybody, although admittedly very likely far less efficient than someone trained to do so, they could technically be used providing they can fit into that suit and understand its operation. Spyrer rigs, though, must be fitted individually, not only to fit their body, but the suits are also tailored to an individual's own genetic composition, the reason being to ensure no one other than that user is capable of recovering and wearing it, very similar to the weaponry in Judge Dredd. Which is just as well, because the thought of brutal gang members making assaults upon Imperial officials with Dark Age death suits is not particularly desirable. But in terms of anybody who may recover such technology just being able to bypass this or otherwise engineer the technology they discover, that is also a flat no, because Spyrer suits are so advanced that, to use the old adage, they're basically magic to the likes of gang members or even advanced technicians of the Underhive and the Lower Hive. At best, the most they could hope to achieve would be removing some of the armour itself and incorporating this into their own at a very superficial level. Everything else within is just too far beyond the capabilities of any who exist in the Underhive. Even perhaps a rogue Mechanicus would struggle. Nonetheless, That doesn't mean that components stripped and recovered may not be sold for an extortionately high price at trading hubs, perhaps spotted by agents of a nearby rogue trader and sold elsewhere off-world or combined with some of their own archaeotech projects back aboard the ship. All of this advanced equipment, though, is entirely necessary because Spyrers typically choose some of the harshest environments of a hive world within which to track their prey. They operate very often entirely alone or at most in very small groups, and for those who choose to descend into the horror of Hive Secundus, the risks then only increase exponentially. Of the existing Spyrer rigs known to us, the most commonly seen are Yeld, Urus, Jakara and Malkadon. The Yeld rig transforms its wearer into a deadly angelic predator, equipped with energy wings that allow silent flight and rapid maneuver in the vertical expanses of the Underhive. Its sleek design provides excellent agility, evasion and stealth capabilities. Its primary weapons are its laser gauntlets, which can fire precise, devastating energy bolts. Additionally, the suit includes a sophisticated chameleonic cloaking device, rendering the Yeld near to invisible and allowing for terrifying, lethal ambushes. The Urus rig is a juggernaut of brute strength and firepower. Enclosed in armour that grants heavy-duty protection, the Urus is equipped with shoulder-mounted bolt launchers capable of firing explosive rounds with deadly accuracy. Its hydraulic systems also augment the wearer's physical strength to superhuman levels, enabling them to crush enemies and obstacles alike, very often enabling them to simply smash straight through structures they need to traverse. The enmeshed dense rows of pistons power the arms of the suit, enabling it to quite literally pulp enemies with sheer blunt trauma. And it may not be as elegant and swift as the Yeld or the Jakara, but it is a frontline heavy-hitting tank of a unit that few would have the skills or war gear to take down. The Jakara rig is designed for swift close-quarters combat. It's sleek and agile, and it enhances the wearer's speed and reflexes to almost Xenos levels, such as the Eldari. It allows them to dart in and out of melee engagements with ease. The Jakara's primary weapon is a monomolecular edged power sword, which the user will employ alongside their mirror shield, which wraps around the forearm of the user, and this contains a force field generator. But the aim of this is not to necessarily deflect incoming fire or even to stop it, because a resonant energy vortex forms across the shield, which then channels the power absorbed and redirects it into an array of several containment devices around the wrist and the wearer. This stored energy can then be focused into the firing chamber at the front of the shield and returned to its source in a blinding bolt of heat and light, and a proficient Jakara Spyrer can use this to make themselves near to invulnerable as they dart forward at lightning speed. Once they have then closed the distance to be within proximity of an enemy, its sword is capable of cutting through almost anything, from dense city superstructure to flesh, bone and armour. An imperceptible strike from the weapon cleaving enemies cleanly in two, removing limbs, heads, with barely the time for the opponent to be aware it's even happened. The Malkadon rig is a true predator of the Underhive, and lies within the nightmares of any prospective prey. They lurk always in darkness, designed for ambush and assassination. This rig allows the wearer to scale walls and ceilings effortlessly using their web weaponry, stalking victims from above. The web spinner used by the Malkadon is not as horrifically lethal as Eldar, for where they fire monomolecular webs capable of cutting through almost anything, the Malkadon's web weaponry will harden to razor-sharp steel webs designed to entangle enemies, and for those without sufficient armour, undoubtedly seriously injuring them. But more importantly, they are extremely tough, leaving those captured by the weapon all but helpless to the closing hunter. The Malkadon is then armed with retractable claws coated with potent toxins, ensuring that even a glancing blow can be fatal. For those ensnared by their web, the death that follows will be as quick or slow as the individual hunter desires. The Malkadon is a perfectly balanced combination of mobility, stealth and lethality, making it a highly efficient and greatly feared predator of the Underhive. The story of the Synthenian rig warrants a more detailed context. because this is an extremely rare example of Spyrer tech thought lost long ago, that was until found by Lady Hyera and Tamino Halmor in the ruins of Hive Secundus. Amidst the devastating revelations of the Aranthian succession, which is another story entirely, Lady Halmor found herself ensnared in a web of violence spun by an attempt on her father's life. For as Lord Gerontius Halmor lay in stasis critically wounded, the ensuing power vacuum ignited a ferocious civil war that ravaged the planet. As the de facto ruler, Lady Halmor was thrust then into a maelstrom of vicious noble power struggles and hive war, with each no more serious than the other. When the insurgents led by Lady Credo struck, Hyera narrowly escaped death, fleeing to the gates of Hive Secundus, where she encountered her brother Tamino. In a desperate bid for survival, the siblings then donned formidable Spyrer suits and vanished into the shadowy, crumbling depths of the Hive. Their perilous quest to obtain the fabled Scythanian pattern hunting rig, a suit of unparalleled power now thought lost to time. But as they emerged with it in their possession, its neural needles piercing the skull of Lady Halmor, her furious determination has reached terrifying new heights. Elements of her past, such as the cybernetic watch skulls that stalk the darkness for her prey, have also been integrated into her new armour. Her arsenal currently including a deadly power spear and phase sword, augmented with a pair of savage claws, enhancing her capabilities. The suit also boasts weaponized archaeo lenses, Medusian projectors, which can paralyze her victims and incapacitate their nervous systems, and this makes her one of the most dreaded combatants now in Necromunda's blood-soaked history. In fact, so formidable is she that even the mal-strained gene-stealers of Secundus may find her to be more than a worthy adversary. The Scythanian Spyrer Rig, then, is a true relic. It is equipped with the aforementioned neural needles that implant themselves directly into the skull of the rig's owner to greatly enhance their ferocity, to which we may then make some speculative connections to other needle-like enhancements to the brain that have historical connections to the dark age of technology, as seen used by certain eaters of worlds. For the parallels between the features are disturbingly similar, which then, for me, leaves the open and concerning question about Lady Halmor and indeed the future of Necromunda. From their earliest days, Spyrer hunters are instructed to avoid the ultimate shame of failing before the gang scum with their crude and their primitive weapons. While many might think this is unlikely, it is in fact more common than they may wish to admit, especially for young Spyrer teams who find themselves awkwardly cornered and outgunned by the heavy weapons of powerful gangs within the Underhive. A Spyrer, for example, may lose contact with a partner, suddenly they find themselves utterly alone. Yet they also know that to return to the Hive's upper echelons is entirely impossible until their vow is fulfilled, for the consequences of doing so may be viewed in their eyes far worse than a simple death. But what many Spyrers are of course not told is that despite their crudity, many gangs wield heavy weapons acquired from off-world or from within the very manufactorums that House Halmor control, that can seriously, if not fatally, damage a Spyrer. We're talking heavy bolters, even plasma weapons. It's even been known for a Juve ganger to get lucky with a hotshot round of some basic las rifle and hit a critical point on a Spyrer rig. So for those lone unfortunate remnants of Spyrer teams who descended into the Underhive and who fell victim to such devastating consequences, they are known as rogues. And this is because these lone Spyrers, stripped of their teammates, are driven by both an intense desperation and shame to complete their vow. This desperation makes them not only more driven, but ever more dangerous, which is both risky for themselves, but much more so for those they would choose to set upon. Very often they will choose their moment and appear during in-progress gang fights, ambushes, or other skirmishes, seeking to exploit the situation and gain experience, thereby taking one step closer to gaining redemption. But rogue Spyrers have also been known to attack small groups of gangers that are just travelling between settlements in a desperate bid for their survival. And whilst rogues are desperate, they're not foolish. They will typically enter battles after the first shots have been fired to avoid being singled out, or to carefully weigh up if a moving patrol is heavily equipped. They will carefully target the most immediate threats to themselves, so that by the time any have figured out what is happening, they have little hope of besting a hunter who is designed to adapt to any situation, and this very often leads to them becoming a situation themselves for most gangers. Ever deeper into the waste zone areas seldom seen by hive dwellers, shadowy spire hunters establish their camps, for they will often spend days or weeks down in the underhive. But whilst only the bravest or most foolhardy of gang trackers would dare to uncover them, far less engage them, this may not be similarly true of rogue spirers. For a rogue will be an extremely unstable, desperate individual, and so in an effort to emerge from the depths with their reputation intact, they may undertake actions that would be otherwise unthinkable, including the elimination of other spirers. Be this to settle scores that began in the upper spire, or because if they all descended together, emerging as the sole survivor of your team may well be frowned upon and carry with it significant shame, even be seen as a failure in the eyes of members of your family when another team emerges totally intact. But to emerge as a sole survivor from a particularly brutal spire hunt, especially one where another entire team was lost, carries with it an almost unbelievable air of respect and achievement. So for whatever reason, some spirers may choose this unthinkable course of action, and while they may be outnumbered, the careful launch of a surprise ambush upon a spirer camp may be enough to turn the tables. For when spirers clash with one another, the battles are unsurprisingly savage to the death and with absolutely no mercy, because they cannot afford any. Such encounters, though, are said to be so rare that most refuse to believe that spirers would dare to hunt and assault one another. But for any nobles who have experienced the true, unvarnished horror of the underhive, they would tell you that within the darkened depths of a hive city, an individual will do anything to survive. For many within the House of Helmore, descending into the underhive was at one time the greatest challenge, and carried with it extreme risks to the individual despite their heavily equipped suits, and this is still very much the case. But some others were known to have wandered further afield into, say, the ashen wastes surrounding hive cities to battle against the scum and scavengers that scratch out a living in such hostile environments. Hive Secundus, though, compared to these, is an entirely different level of difficulty and risk. It has little functional infrastructure and is an almost completely dark hive city. Its twisted corridors promise enemies to contend with, the likes of which few humans have ever seen with their own eyes. The deeper and darker any would fear to tread within Hive Secundus, the greater the risk, for every hidden vault, concealed walkway or collapsed structure threatens Xenos predators waiting to leap forth and eviscerate any Spyrer unprepared to engage enemies with fractional seconds of notice. And whilst it might be admirable to descend into the levels of danger within Hive Secundus alone, it's also as foolish as it is laudable. Consequently, many Spyrers understand the sense and pragmatism that comes from forming exploratory groups to enter Secundus. These small hunting parties could contain multiple Spyrers, or due to many households' close association with gangs such as the Van Saar, who are generally speaking a more elevated, far less brutish hive gang, they will lead small groups of explorators into the depths of this city. For a Spyrer, when supported by a tech hunting group of Van Saar, has a more than decent chance of survival. For the Van Saar themselves bring their own advanced suits and weaponry. Their objectives rarely conflict with the Spyrers because gang members seek archaeotech here, whereas the Spyrers are generally focused on the completion of their vows. Each understands that the temporary pact made is fragile, but they seek to support one another in their goals. Incidentally, Van Saar tech hunters are similarly chosen for their skill, their mastery in unlocking specialist archaeotech, and each group will consist of experts in this, as well as repairing technology, medicine, biology, pathfinders and just weapon experts, all of which will be required in supporting the bulk power of, say, an Aurus Spyrer to secure their goals and then emerge from Secundus alive. In our next exploration, we will delve even deeper into the suffocating gloom of Hive Secundus to uncover the malevolent secrets of the Malstrain and peer into the shadowy future of Necromunda. So brace yourself for a journey into the darkest corners of the Hive, where survival is a whispered prayer and every shadow conceals a lurking dread. So join me soon, as the true horror is yet to come. As always, I greatly appreciate your support here on the channel, and if you enjoyed this, please hit the like, make sure you're subscribed, and as always, I'll see you in the next one.